TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom ve'erev tov, good evening. Welcome to our daily TV7 Israel News Bulletin broadcast from Jerusalem. U.S. Ambassador to Turkey Tom Barrack says that the Turkish and Qatari military's involvement in Gaza is highly unlikely. The supreme leader of the Islamic Republic in Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, warns that any attack against his regime would spark a regional conflict. President Donald Trump reasserts that unless the Ayatollah regime makes a deal, it will bear the consequences. The Gaza Strip's border crossing with Egypt has formally reopened today for the first time since May 7th of 2024, when IDF forces seized control of the Palestinian side of the border town of Rafah. Moving forward, a total of 150 Gazans will now be permitted to leave the Gaza Strip every day, and 50 Palestinians will be permitted to enter under a framework of an international mechanism that is operated by European organizations in coordination with Egyptian authorities. It is important to know that those entering and exiting the Gaza Strip will undergo a vigorous vetting process by Israeli intelligence agencies to frustrate Hamas or any other Palestinian terror group from exploiting the border crossing. Meanwhile, U.S. Ambassador to Turkey Tom Barrack, who also serves as envoy to Syria, is promoting an inclusion of Turkish and Qatari forces in the International Stabilization Force, or ISF, that will be tasked with disarming the Islamist Hamas throughout the Gaza Strip. Ambassador Barrack's apparent reasoning relates to Turkey's Islamic foothold, as he puts it, and close relations with Hamas would somehow soften the designated Palestinian terror group's refusal to disarm.
This is your regional decision. This is your regional opportunity. We're not going to impose a mandate of how it needs to be done or a new Sykes-Picot 3.0 mechanism that was only derived really because of black gold, right? The West, and I say this honorably and respectfully, we screwed it up.
Yeah.
We drew lines around tribes and regions that were never designed to be together.
Ambassador Barrack, during a Q&A session to the Milken Institute, continued by stating that while he hopes to see Turkey's inclusion, the deep distrust between Ankara and Jerusalem will ultimately frustrate Turkish and Qatari military involvement in Gaza. Asked further to provide his prognostics vis-à-vis Turkey's relations with Israel, Ambassador Barrack acknowledged it is bad.
So my personal opinion, which is beyond my job description, is absolutely, if I were personally advising Netanyahu, I would say that's one of the most brilliant things he could do, because Turkey has a very good relationship, a criticized relationship with Hamas, right? One of the difficulties with both Qatar, who's been our greatest ally in this process, right? When you think of all the difficulties of getting there and having a discussion, Qatar, Sheikh Mohammed Abdulrahman Al Thani and the Emir have been great partners since the first term, and Stephen really cemented that relationship. In the second term, they've been amazing in having a dialogue with Hamas. Quite honestly, Turkey, at the end of these discussions, stepped in to have the final discussion with Hamas, side by side with Qatar, which saved us. It really got the U.S. to a decision point. If you think about it, having Turkey, who has a relationship and an Islamic foothold, will soften whatever has to be done in this disarming Hamas.
Ambassador Barrack was further asked about U.S. President Donald Trump's remarks related to, quote, a golden age for the Middle East, and whether he believes it to be realistic.
You have to look at it realistically. Abraham couldn't do it. Ishmael and Isaac couldn't do it. Moses couldn't do it. Jesus couldn't do it. 7 Crusades couldn't do it. So to think that you're going to do it in 2 years is probably not realistic. And what does that mean to do it? So what President Trump has done is run to event-driven diplomacy. Because what worked before never worked, right? For the last 100 years, since the hand of the West has been involved, from Sykes-Picot to McMahon to Balfour, everything the West has imposed on the Middle East has been a disaster.
Other than his unabashed blasphemous remarks, it is important to point out that Ambassador Barrack engaged in sheer historic revisionism, in which he essentially parroted regional anti-Western narratives that lay exclusive blame on the West for decades of strategic mismanagement by Mid-Eastern leaders, deep-rooted corruption, expansionist aspirations that repeatedly led to conflicts, along a long list of other state-level failures. Making a sharp turn to Turkey's city of Istanbul, where Turkish protesters held a large demonstration in support of the Ayatollah regime in Tehran, during the course of which they burnt the American and Israeli flags while raising the flag of the Islamic Republic next to Turkey's flag, and images of leaders of the Ayatollah regime, Hamas, Hezbollah, even Maduro and the Houthis, while chanting anti-US slogans calling for the end of the United States. The Turkish protesters went as far as to burn an image of President Donald Trump as well as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The protest was held amid efforts by the Turkish leadership to reach a negotiated solution between the Islamic Republic of Iran and the United States that aims to effectively de-escalate tensions, as prospects of an American attack that could bring an end to the Ayatollah regime in Tehran remains highly probable. Meanwhile, in Tehran,
Allah is great. Khamenei is the supreme leader. Death to those against the supreme leader. Death to America. Death to England. Death to the infidel hypocrites. Death to Israel.
the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has sought to dismiss President Donald Trump's warnings of devastating consequences unless the Ayatollah regime ends its nuclear weapons program and ceases its murderous attacks on Iranian citizens.
When you hear them talking about war, saying things like we'll come with this plane or that plane and do this or that, it's nothing new. The Americans have threatened us repeatedly in the past, saying all options are on the table, which includes the option of war. They've always said these things. Similarly, this person constantly claims they've brought warships. But the Iranian nation shall not be intimidated by these things. The Iranian people will not be stirred by these threats. They do not fear a fair confrontation. We are not the initiators and do not want to attack any country, but the Iranian nation will strike a strong blow against anyone who attacks and harasses them.
Ayatollah Khamenei's claim that his regime are not the initiators and do not want to attack any country, as he put it, followed 2 years in which the Axis of Terror proxies, under guidance of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, launched an unprovoked, multi-front offensive against the State of Israel and freedom of navigation in the strategic Strait of Bab el-Mandeb from Yemen, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Iran proper, a multi-front war that it seemingly lost. And while the Ayatollah regime is trying to rehabilitate its regional proxies, Ali Khamenei leveled a threat to the United States that if President Trump decides to attack Iran, it will once again spark a regional conflict.
Also, Americans should know that if they start a war, this time it will be a regional war.
Meanwhile, at President Trump's Mar-a-Lago club in Florida,
Sir, on Iran, the Supreme Leader today said that U.S. attack could spark a regional war. Giving you response to that, sir?
Why wouldn't he say that? Of course you're going to say that, but we have the biggest, most powerful ships in the world over there, very close, a couple of days, and hopefully we'll make a deal. If we don't make a deal, then we'll find out whether or not he was right.
It is important to note that IDF Chief of General Staff Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir concluded a brief visit to Washington over the course of the weekend, after which, upon returning to Israel, General Zamir met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and held security consultations with regard to the Iranian issue that also included Mossad Director David Barnea and a handful of other top security officials. Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. I would like to seize this opportunity to voice my gratitude. If you are a supporter of TV7 Israel, your donation is essential in helping us produce our daily news updates from here in Jerusalem. If you haven't yet supported TV7 Israel, which is exclusively donation-based, please consider doing so. You can donate via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. Separately, as ever, pray for our brothers and sisters facing persecution globally, including in Iran, Syria, Nigeria, among an extensive list of other nations, along with prayers for the peace of Jerusalem and redemption of Israel. I'm Jonathan Essen, wishing you an Erev Mevorach, and God willing, until our next update, Shalom from Jerusalem.